So, the X5 needs a new radiator, and I noticed that there's not very many good videos online on exactly how to replace the radiator. So, we're going to make one. First thing you got to do is you got to take this out. Now there's going to be plastic clips. They look just like this. They're going to be in there. You just pull up that little thing and then this whole clip is going to come out. And then this whole piece right here will just pull right away. So you can set that down and then take off the air intake. The first thing you got to do, undo these bolts up here or push pins, whatever you have on your model year. Set that aside. You're going to undo that screw there, which clamps that. Undo this. You do that by squeezing these and then it should pull right off. Now I already undid mine, but you squeeze it here. Undo this little hose down here. Get those two off. Undo your MAF plug back here. You do that by squeezing right on the two sides here. I already undid mine, but you just pull that off. There's one 10mm bolt right here. Take that out, set that aside, and then undo this little vacuum hose here. Same as that other thing, you just squeeze it on the two sides and it'll pull off. Tuck that out of the way, and then you should be able to, I didn't actually try this, but pull it off there first, and then this should lift out. Oh, it looks like there's some hoses stuck to the bottom. Well, it would lift out, but you gotta undo these little plastic clips and stuff down here. So undo this plastic clip, unclip it here. I don't know if you can see that. Unclip it there, unclip it here, unclip it there. It's not actually clipped. Just undo all those clips and then it should pull right out for you, and then this will come out like cake. Once you get all those clips undone, that's still going to be this little hose going into the bottom here. I don't really know how to take that off. I don't really care to figure out, and we don't really need to for this application because it's long enough. You can just set it over here. Make sure you don't scratch the side of your car, just kind of set it over there. So the next thing you got to do is you got to take these are the little clamps that kind of hold the radiator in, and there's going to be two little 10mm bolts, one for each clamp. So there's one here, one over here. So undo those, and then this should just lift right off. Just one piece. There you go. You can set that off to the side now. Make sure you're putting your bolts somewhere safe. And then we're going to be undoing the nut there to get this fan out. And then we're going to be taking this shroud out. And before we take the shroud out, we're going to have to make sure to unplug that plug there, and also pull this plug off of its little mounting thing there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll keep moving on. So for taking off this black shroud, first we unclip that, move that plug that was over there, and then there's these little clips, 1, 2, and 3, and these are easy enough to pull out. You can take a screwdriver just like this, and I already pushed it out, but you can push on that rather than trying to squeeze it in here to get that to pop out. And then once you've got that popped out, just grab some pliers like this. You can put them on like that and then pull it the rest of the way out, and then you can push and it'll pop all the way out. Or just pull it all the way out with your pliers, just like that. So we're going to do that for all three. This one is broken, so that could be, oh, that little thing just came out. I'll pull that out after I'm off camera so I don't lose it. Wiggle that sucker out of there, and there we go. So once you get those out, you're going to want to, well, first thing I probably should have mentioned a while ago is get your drain plug draining into a bucket so that you can have an empty radiator. So then you're going to get this off. Now this can be a little tricky sometimes. You see these screws down here? Try and get it to focus. So you can put a screwdriver in and kind of hold those screws like that while you get your wrench on here to undo it. Or if you do this often enough, you get tools like this. So this goes around, and those two little holes go around those bolts down there, and then you obviously got the right size here. And then You can put that on there, and this is reverse thread. So once you get it loosened, you can just spin it like that until it comes all the way off. And hold it so it doesn't fall on the ground and break, because that'd be bad. Next thing you want to do, so it's a little easier, is obviously undo your upper radiator hose. Now these things can be really tricky, so kind of a little trick for getting these off is spray some WD-40 or some PB Blaster up under here, and kind of, you can take this piece off just like that. And you can spray some PB Blaster in there and just kind of work it around and wiggle this up and down like this while you're pulling on it. And eventually it'll come off. It might be really hard. If you can't get it off there without breaking this part, you can undo the hose here. That one goes down over there and then right there as well. That might be a little easier, and you can get it off once you have the radiator completely out. But that's what you got to do there. Once we get this shroud out, then we'll undo the lower radiator hose and the transmission cooler and all that. So once you have that undone and you're kind of holding it in here and you got all this undone, make sure you got everything for this plastic shroud done before you take the fan all the way off. Then you should be able to just lift it out like this. Now, this is probably more of a two-hand job, so I'm going to put the camera down, but it should all just pull out the top. Just be gentle with it and it'll all kind of pull out together. Now that that is out, we can see all that. And just a quick side note, this fan, the fluids inside of this fan clutch do not like to be set flat down. So keep that fan, like set it up against something so it's standing up like that, and that'll be a lot better for it than if you lay it down on the ground. So, oh, another little thing to note, these little guys here, this little clip is going to be sitting on the radiator like this. And be mindful of those when you take off that initial plastic shroud and when you take off the shroud in here, so that you don't lose these, because these are important. So now we're looking at a big open bay, and what we're going to need to disconnect is all the hoses right here. There's 1, 2, and then 3, which kind of goes to the bottom. That could be a little difficult. And then we're going to need to disconnect this thing down here, which I'll show you once I get these off. So we're going to disconnect these. They come off the same as the other hoses, and you just kind of wiggle them off and be really gentle. So once you get these hoses off, you'll be able to get down to there. Just a quick another note, this is the hose that came off the very bottom under here. Now that one is going to have pressure from all the water that's still in the engine, all the water that is still in here. So lift that up and kind of kink it off. And that way you won't lose all the coolant that is in your engine. It'll be easier to bleed it later. So I just kind of tucked it in there. Just kind of do whatever you want with it. Just kind of try and get these ones out of the way. Next thing we're going to do, this is the transmission cooler, and there's this little black thing right here. Now you can pull up on that. Serves the same purpose as, well, it's pretty tight. That serves the same purpose as the little clips that are on here, as these little clips here. So these little clips are pretty small. You might want a small screwdriver for doing these ones, but that little black thing serves the same purpose as those. So you just pull up on that, and then this whole piece should kind of release and come away. Just kind of gently wiggle it off of the radiator. And then we can deal with this lower radiator hose over here, and then we're almost ready to take the radiator out. Okay, so with the lower radiator hose, you got to first take off this little plug right here. So you're going to push, let's see if I can get my hand, push on this little metal clip right here and pull up on that, and that should just come off, and you can kind of tuck that up over there. And then unclip the clip that you need to for the lower radiator hose and try and wiggle this off like you did the top one. Now this one can be really tricky because you can't get at it very well. So if you can't get that off, don't try too hard and break it. Rather, undo it right here and wiggle it off your thermostat housing here, because that will be much easier to access. Well, a little easier to access, and you don't have to worry about breaking the plastic of the radiator because this is metal. So do that, and then we got one more step and the radiator can come out. Okay, so I ended up having to take mine off the top. Now one thing, I don't know if you can really see it, I'll try and get this back kind of on there, but see right, I got a screwdriver to point at it. See right here where the screwdriver's pointing? That's kind of a little section where when this is all the way on, you can use that to start prying this top hose off. So highly recommend just taking the hose off the top and worry about getting it off the actual radiator from down there once it's out of the car. This you can just tuck out of the way. It should just pop right off. And now we got one more step before taking the radiator out, and that is these two bolts. There's one here and there's one here. Now this one's kind of hidden, but you can just kind of pull, you can kind of pull that away and undo it. And once you have those out, we should be able to just lift the radiator up out of the car. So go ahead and do that. So this is what it looks like with no radiator in it. Side note, when you're taking the radiator out, try and get it as far away from the condenser and stuff here as you can, because it will need to clear past this stuff and these hoses over here. So you want to move it out as far as you can this way, and then it should pull straight out. So here we got the radiator out. You can see here's that clip we were talking about for the transmission cooler. These clips here. This one is the one that went here. Now you don't really need to undo that. That could stay plugged in. Actually, this one might go up here. Yeah, you don't really need to undo that. You could leave that plugged in, but it's easier to just unplug everything and then know. But now we have better access to this, so we can wiggle this off. And we'll need to make sure that we get this sensor. If we wiggle off and use the same hose, then that's okay. But if you're getting a new hose, you got to change over that sensor to the new hose. And then putting the radiator back in. Here's my new radiator. It's actually used off one of my parts cars. You just put it back in exactly the opposite of what we just did to take it out. I'm not really going to video that because this video is already probably pretty long and the process is literally just the same. So I think you guys can figure that out. If you just rewatch the video if you're a little unsure about how something went together, and you'll be able to see. So do that, get everything plugged back together, and then I'll come back to show you how to bleed it. One side note I will mention about reassembly is these seals in here. Now we saw already how hard it is to get these hoses to wiggle off. This is the lower radiator hose. So putting them back on is also a little tricky. So what you want to do is either take some oil, either from your radiator cap or from some, I'll take it out of it here, or from some other place. Just get some oil on your finger and rub it on that seal so that that seal is nice and lubed up, and it'll slide right back on. It'll be a lot easier than if you don't do that. So just do that. For the little ones are pretty easy to push back on, but at least for the upper and lower radiator hoses, the big ones, do that. And also, if you took it off here, make sure you clean this up before you put the hose back on, because that is disgusting. And it won't make a seal if it stays all gross. So that's the tips for putting it back together. Next will be bleeding. Another side note with reassembly, this plastic shroud here that goes with the fan. Now remember, the fan is reverse thread, so you're going to be going this way in order to tighten it. But also with this fan, there's these little clips. There's one right here that it slides into. It'll slide into something down here. And then over here, there's one right there, and there's one farther down there. I don't know if you can see it. Make sure it gets lined up with those when you push it down in, and that's what will click it on. So, just a side note. Oh, it's back together, and now we're on to bleeding. So what you're going to want to do is fill this up. I'm not going to pour it while I'm on camera, but fill up this thing, and the little red checker in there is going to start floating. Now don't overfill it, but you can fill it up. Fill it up with, however much came out. You can fill it up with what came out. Just make sure and strain it all out so it's clean. Or I recommend putting all new stuff in. This Xerox Go5 is the same chemical makeup as the original stuff that BMW puts in it, but a lot cheaper than the BMW blue coolant. So highly recommend this Xerox Go5. So fill this up, and then as it kind of gets full, just squeeze the upper radiator hose and squeeze the lower radiator hose. You can get your arm in through here. Squeeze the lower radiator hose down here, and just keep squeezing it, and it'll burble and it'll kind of sink down. And do that until it doesn't sink down anymore. Then you can start the car up and rev it up a few times, and then turn it off and top it off, and then just let it run, let it get all the way hot, and then let it cool down and check it again after. So that's pretty much going to be the process. We won't really need the bleed screw on this X5. On an E39 like that one, it is a much bigger problem, but on an X5, it's not too big of a deal because the coolant bottle is actually on top of the motor. So, lucky for you. Okay, so we filled it with coolant and we've been squeezing the hoses for quite a while. It's been making some burbly noises. And this is the noise you want to hear when you're about done. See how it's not burbling at all? It's just kind of, you can hear the water flowing through. I don't know if you can really hear that. There's not really much noise. So, top it off until the bottom little bulb there is level with this, because that's full for cold, as you can see right there. Do that and then start it up, rev it up a couple times, like 4,000, and then you can turn it off and come check it. Top it up if it needs it, and then just let it run for a while. I just started it up, revved it up a few times, a little bit. You got to be careful because this fan's still going to be locked up and you don't want to be shooting fan blades everywhere, but it went down that much, so I'm going to top it up and then I'm just going to let it run. I'm going to let it run with the cap off for a couple of minutes, and I'm just going to put the cap on. Maybe you can take it for a drive around the block and then bring it back and just let it sit and cool down. So once you have it running, you can see out there, you can see the little red thing, you can see that it's still full. You're going to want to turn the heater all the way up to 90 so it's flowing through the heater core, and then just give it some quick bulbs like this. And you can see it'll move out there a little bit. And then just kind of let it idle and warm up, and we'll go put the cap on in a couple of minutes here, and then we'll just let it warm up all the way to operating temperature. So that's how you change a radiator in a BMW X5. Stay tuned for more because we'll be doing more DIY videos on plenty of other cars. So stay tuned for that. Please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you later. Bye.